Come on. Louder. Louder.
1, 2.
Hey. Ah. Very good. We had a girl here last year, because before that I never used a microphone. Susanna, remember? Or girl, boy, I don't know. But a lovely jazz guitar player. And she spoke so quietly.
So turn on
Good
subtitles.
God! Okay, talking to this is super funny, but almost not audible or what you say. So quite amazing. Oh, never mind. Well, it's maybe we should. He can do his thing, and he will be here as soon as he can. I know the panic. I know the panic feeling. So it's a legendary evening. We have, and you'll get with the camera, we have the wizard Manjuna, and we have the wizard Jack Gardiner!
You know, I'm going to say first things first, it's a massive honour to be here. I grew up watching all of the videos from Frick Guitar Camp, you know, Christoph Godin, Guthrie, all these guys. The man himself over here, so thank you for inviting me and letting me be part of this, Matthias.
We didn't have a choice. Time for some time now.
We did, didn't we? Actually, 2 years, and finally we got here. But yeah, my name is Jack Gardiner. I come from Liverpool in England. Although we don't really consider ourselves English, I think I'd much rather align with my Irish brethren or Scottish brethren. It's one of them. But that's where my funny accent comes from. Mixed with this low voice, it's a fucking nightmare to understand, I know. So I'll try and speak as slowly as possible. If you don't understand something, just raise your hand. I am braced though now for the whole room doing this. So,
You understand me, Jack, so you're alright.
Yeah, we'll get each other caught in. Maybe before I talk a little bit about my past, can I play a song to warm up?
Yeah. We like music.
Are we into like 80s cheese music? I know this is there's actually a film that this was inspired by. It's a Swedish film, Kung Fury. Are you familiar with this? We are massive fans of this. Me and Owain, the Norwegian guy I write with. It's 80s, Miami Vice, all that kind of stuff. This is a track called Glitter.
Yay.
that was a track called Glitter, like I mentioned. Very, very 80s inspired. But I think one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit later on is it's more about the phrasing. I am way more simple in terms of my thought process than this guy over here. You know, I cannot count. You showed me your book before, Matthias, and I was like, I can't even count the first fucking measure, if I'm totally honest. But yeah, this is written in collaboration with a Norwegian guy called Owain, and we've been writing together now for 3 years, I think it is. That's more of the easy stuff, but I think you guys are into the weird time signatures, all these kind of things. Should we try something a bit more complex? Another track, maybe?
Yeah. And no widdly widdly when Jack, I know, is talking. I know where you live. Oh, there's somebody. There's a question.
I was wondering if you could repeat the name of the track.
Yeah, it's called Glitter.
Glitter. Awesome.
Yes.
I will confiscate your guitars if you sweep and swoop while Jack is. I know you don't think about entire but yes. So behave. You're all my children. Behave. Yes.
So this next track, it's actually featuring a Swedish man. You might know this guy. It's called UTFF, featuring Henrik Linder.
Oh.
Do you know the band Dirty Loops?
Yeah, it's coming next week.
No.
And next week.
Ah.
After that.
And I'm missing him. Well,
Yes.
I've never actually met in person. But yeah, he provided.
Don't tell anyone. Guests are secrets. Yes.
He provided, or kindly provided, bass duties for this next track. But the name UTFF, so many people have asked us, what does it actually mean? And when Henrik sent the demo back, he was like, man, you didn't give me a name. So in the words of a famous Swedish guitar player, he was like, I've just called it Unleash the Fucking Fury. Like, I don't think I can put that on YouTube with that title. So hence UTFF. It's also an airport in Azerbaijan, but we top that on the Google things now. You know, so anyone looking for their flight, unfortunately, they're going to find our fucking weird fusion song. Do you need a click in? Hang on. Here we go. UTFF. Unleash the fucking fury.
That's the wrong tempo. 1 second.
You can change the tempo.
Yes.
Good lord, spare no expense. Must be a little Mac.
holy shit, Henrik's playing on that. I remember when he sent us back the demo, I was like, fuck, what do I play over that now? But yeah, I mean, maybe we can start with a bit of background. So for those of you who don't know or aren't aware of my playing, like I say, I come from Liverpool, but now live in Switzerland. Does anyone know a place called Zermatt, the Toblerone mountain?
Yeah.
You know that little picture? I see those tourists every day walking past my house getting that picture. You know. But I started playing guitar when I was 9. Classical guitar was the first thing. My dad is a bass player. I saw the hand go up there, by the way. My dad is a bass player, and he was massively into things like the Grateful Dead, you know, like Jimi Hendrix. He was a proper like hippie, but he did have a load of Chick Corea stuff. So John Patitucci, there was a VHS I remember of that when I was very young. And then Zappa Plays Zappa was another one, and obviously Steve Vai was the guitar player on that. And I remember as a kid, you know, stopping wherever I was doing when Steve did the solo. Still one of those core memories. I was like, I want to play guitar like that in the future, you know. My dad wouldn't let me though. He wouldn't buy me a guitar, you know, typical Liverpool thing. I think working class, it was like, fuck that, you know, you need to earn money. Music doesn't earn any money. It still doesn't. But yeah. Basically, after this, you know, my auntie ended up buying me a classical guitar, started studying in school, and then I think I might be one of the few in here that grew up with like YouTube. So when I was a kid, YouTube had just started, and that's how I discovered like all the guys like yourself, Matthias, Guthrie, Tom Quayle, who was my teacher. Does everyone know Tom Quayle?
Yeah. He was here.
Ah, yeah. He told me about the incident in the airport, actually. We can talk about that later.
What happened?
The little bag that looked like something else.
Oh.
But yeah, I remember taking lessons with him. Completely changed everything for me. And it's one of the things which I'll talk about today. I know Tom tunes in fourth. I don't. I tune in standard tuning. And he has a very particular way of viewing intervals, things like this. I do as well, but in standard, and I have like a specific system of how to work this out and to label it. So it's one thing we can maybe go through as we go along, I should say. But yeah, I mean, I started gigging when I was 18, mainly in cover bands and things like this. Like I was playing, I think when I first turned 18, 7 nights a week in Liverpool. And if anyone's been there, it is a fucking shit show. Playing on Matthew Street to people that want to punch you, essentially. I remember Play That Funky Music White Boy one day, and literally a guy pulled my hair as I'm playing, you know. Let me just get some tone, just going. Oh, gone. So I learned the hard way, shall we say, but that did help me a lot in my development, and Tom Quayle probably attests to this, is that although I had all the kind of instruction from him and, you know, like all of the kind of the work which I was doing at home, the place I learned the most from was just being on stage and playing with other musicians, particularly musicians that were way better than me. You know, I think that is one thing to take from all of this. If you can play in a band, regardless of whether it's covers, regardless of whether it's a style that you don't enjoy, I would highly encourage it. I know a lot of people like shy away from it. I don't want to do that thing. I learnt most of my trade doing those gigs 7 nights a week, the same shit songs. Luckily, there was space to improvise though. You know, this is the thing, is I had a few singers that I played with who would let me take these big solos, and over songs like that can be really fun. So there's an element of, you know, you're still developing language, even though it's the same song, you have that ability to experiment and discover things for yourself. We'll talk a little bit about that later on, some songs which I think would be beneficial to learn. But yeah, do we want to dive straight in, or do you want more music first? Music. Okay. This is actually a funny one. You guys might like this. So the time signature for this, we've had huge arguments with it. I'm going to look at you guys. So when I wrote the demo, I think it was 13, and I feel this as 6 and 7. But Owain, the guy which I write with, was like, no, it's 5, 5 and 2. Which, to me, I am a total novice when it comes to these type of things. But,
Yeah, that's
5, 5 and 3, sorry, that's what he said. Yeah, sorry. Never good at maths, that's probably why I can't read these books. Yeah. Liverpool, fucking hell. But yeah, if you can tell me afterwards so I can finally end this argument with him. This is a track called Action Boys.
What action?
Action Boys, yeah. We are so useless at naming things. It's like fucking Kung Fury style. Let's just go all in, 80s cheese.
I just need to change tempo. Bear with me 1 second.
They're gonna have a vivid argument. Is it 12 or 13?
count that then?
There's both 13 and 12 there.
There was 12.
There's both 12
Ah,
and 13.
okay.
There is.
I'm glad you say it because
That's 25. Why not?
It's so funny, away, and he loves all that kind of stuff. It's worth pointing out, like, because we write together, very often what we do is I'll send the first idea, first half of the song, and then he'll fuck with the arrangement of it, and he'll write the second half of the song. That's kind of how this collaboration works. I am trying to play both guitar parts though at the same time, which is not fun. You know, he's got his solo sections. Transcribing that shit was not fun at all. But yeah, I mean, maybe now we can talk a little bit about how I visualize things. If you want to do that. Yeah. Any questions beforehand, by the way, or should we ask questions as we go?
Why did you move to Zermatt?
Can I say Brexit?
Brexit.
Oh, great.
That was one of the reasons, actually. Yeah, I actually met my wife, so yeah, it was love. Yeah, but Brexit as well. You know, that actually was a part of it. I think, like, for anyone, I don't know, is there anyone from the UK out here? Right. Okay.
In Sweden now.
Wise move, mate. Wise move. Yeah, basically, as a touring musician, it's become an absolute nightmare now because you're only allowed 90 days in 6 months. And you need letters of, like, invitation, and in a no, it's the same the other way.
Yeah.
So, for example, like, our band were playing Radar Festival on Friday in Manchester, and they've had to send out letters. I'm the only British guy in the band. Wayne's from Norway, our bass player's from Italy, drummers from Poland. They've all had to get individual letters saying, you know, you're allowed in. We promise we're only going to do one gig. We're not trying to stay here. I don't know who'd want to stay there anymore, to be totally honest. Ship food. So yeah, basically, mix of those two things, you know. But yeah, maybe we can talk mainly about improvisation and visualization. I think they're the first two things I want to cover. So, I mentioned about this kind of interval way of visualizing the fretboard. Are you familiar with that, or do you want me to recap it? Did you guys see the Tom Quayle thing? Maybe not everyone.
No.
Right, okay. So, a few different ways of visualizing the guitar. I'm sure you've all known 3-note per string, you know, these kind of shapes. And cage system is the other one, if we're all familiar with that, you know, where you've got all of these shapes. They're all cool, but I feel like they have their limitations because you're relying on these pattern-based ideas. When I'm talking about intervals, I'm not talking about this kind of thing, you know, going through scale. Not like this, or... That was nearly Michael Jackson, I think. All those gigs, man, you know. But yeah, I'm not talking about it in this way. I'm thinking of intervals in terms of their functions against a root note. So all you need to do to understand how this system works is you need to know your note names, essentially. And loads, I'm sure, are guilty of not knowing that off by heart. I know I certainly was for years and years and years. And there's even sometimes I look at the neck and I'm like, you're lying to me, that's not a C. You know, still to this day. But if you don't know your note names, one cool exercise to do with this is if you know your 5 position pentatonic, these kind of things, is to take those 5 positions, and you take, say we're in A, we find the root notes just within that one position. Position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5. You can go. This kind of thing. You can do that through, say, the cycle of fourths. Does everyone know what the cycle of fourths is? So I prefer that to the circle of fifths. It's just like the jazz thing that was put into my brain years ago. So instead of going G to C, you go C to F, essentially. And what's cool about that as well is that it's moving you to completely different areas of the neck. You know, a lot of guys, what they tend to do is they move chromatically, so they go... It's much harder to retain that information, I've found. If you do it the opposite way, it's forcing you to visualize in a different way. But essentially, what I do then from here is I will take a root note. I'd encourage everyone to get your guitars out if you haven't already. Maybe you can play along with me for this. Yes.
We can do a call, the 3 of us at the same time.
Separately.
Yeah.
12 and 13.
Appreciate it. Take about a year before we find the song.
So all I want you to do, we're going to be thinking of a major scale. Nice and simple, C major. The way I'm going to label this though is not C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. I'm going to be thinking of this in terms of the intervals, how they are constructed. So I'm going to label them in terms of numbers as well. If we start, first finger on that 8th fret of the low E string. All I will do is think of, that's my root. Major second is the next one, or I'll call that just 2 or 9. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be above, you know, the octave or whatever. You can interchangeably label that the same thing. 2 or 9. 3, the major third, this one. Perfect 4th, I'll just call that 4. Perfect 5th, 5. Major 6th, that can also be the 13 as well, you know, that's interchangeable. Same with the 4th, I forgot to mention that can be the 11th as well. It's just the same thing, you don't have to think of them as always being above the octave, it's just an interchangeable term really. Then we've got where we were on the 6th, so then the last one is major 7. And then we're back again. So in my head, how I'm seeing this is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1. It's just a different version of that. Now with each individual interval in there, the way I practice this is I want to develop like a visual relationship of what each one of them looks like compared to the root. So by that I mean you can take the major third for example, and I want to see visually what that looks like, as well as orally, you know. Can I say that? Yeah, you can. Just checking my vocab. Orally makes sense, doesn't it, when it's above the ear, yeah. No. Holy shit. So I want to be practicing what that sounds like as well in my head. You can do that with all of those intervals, just within that like 1 octave range. Now what I want you to do is start on that same C on the 8th fret, but start with your 2nd finger now. So, what I'm going to do now is every single one of those intervals in my head, I'm mapping it against what it looks like when I start with that 2nd finger. So the 3rd is now here, rather than here. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, back again. It's so weird to hear just this C. It's like a ringtone. It's quite pleasant though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely.
As long as everyone's in tune. So, now what I would do is start with the 3rd finger, and let's see how this changes now. So we've got... And I would do the same thing of what does the 2nd look like? What does the 3rd look like? What does the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th? Do the same thing with the pinky, but very often the 3rd finger and the 4th finger, they tend to be very similar looking shapes. So you've got... You can go back on yourself here, if you'd like to, or you could just stretch out. But what I want to be able to do then is to think in my head, rather than think of these note names and go C, B, whatever, all I'm doing is think of these numbers. So in my head, if I say, okay, I want to see what the 7th looks like. Sorry, that was a bit out of tune. But that's what I am doing in my head when I'm looking for that interval there. I think it's just an easier way because the interval describes the sound in my head, whereas a note name doesn't really tell me anything. I have to do that extra bit of work, you know, like C to D. Then I have to think, what is that relationship? That's a major 2nd or a major 9th. It's just an extra step, whereas if you just label it as these numbers, it's much more direct, at least in my thinking anyway. Then I would do the same thing from the A string. So we find, let's go to the 15th fret on that A string. We find the root note C. You'll notice that's exactly the same shape or pattern, really, finger pattern, as the one on the low E string. So at the moment, all of those intervals are the same. 7th, 6th. It's the same visual pattern that's going on, and as well, it's obviously the sound of it is the same. You do the same thing from the 2nd finger. Exactly the same again. Now though, when we get to the 3rd finger, this is where things change, and this is why Tom Quayle tunes in 4ths. So, for him, it's the same no matter what, but for us, things have to change slightly. So if you start with that 3rd finger, you'll notice as you go up the scale, this is all the same. But once we get to here, that's had to move. So if you think back here, where were we? Sorry. This is all shifted up. If you can notice that. So that's 1, one thing that we have to bear in mind. We have extra work than if we were to do this in fourths. You do it with your pinky, it's the same pattern. I would then do that from the D string, and you'll see it's a different pattern again, but again, I'm trying to label where these intervals are, so... sorry. Go to the G string, do the same thing. This kind of idea. You can even do it from the B string or single strings as well, that's a good idea. But I am always looking at what they are in relationship to that nearest root note, if this makes sense. So if I'm here, I'm not thinking of necessarily that low C, I'm thinking of it. One kind of problem this solves is that when we improvise as well, rather than doing it, say, the 3 note per string thing, you know, where you learn all these, all of that kind of stuff. Very often you are locked into what finger starts those patterns. You know, as you go through these, you'll find this kind of thing. When people improvise, you see it's like they want to gravitate towards the shape. This, by starting it from all 4 fingers, hopefully eliminates that. It should mean that you are able to construct or see the scale regardless of what finger you start on. So if you accidentally land on, say, I don't know, the 5th with the 2nd finger, you can still see that there. You know, I'll see loads of times, like when people are improvising, and then it's like they go, oh shit, next part. Rather than thinking, oh, can I get away with this moving just to that nearest root note, you know. Does this all make sense so far? Is there any questions? By the way? Yes.
So when you said that you had to memorize the name of all the notes, so you only use that to find the roots?
Yeah.
And then, so you don't use that for intervals then?
Then I don't care about note names at all. Yeah. It's just the interval relationship between them, you know. You could do the same for, like, the natural minor scale, and rather than just thinking these are the same thing, this is where I change my mindset. So yes, all of those patterns will work if we think, C, what's the relative minor? A. Every single one of those that we've done will work. But in my mind, I'm switching what interval that is dependent on the root. So say, like, if you take A natural minor or the Aeolian scale, the interval construction I'm thinking of, or the formula, is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. If you take that from the root note, I'll think of A down here. All I've done essentially is flatten a couple of those notes. If you think that 3rd became flat 3, so that visual relationship just means it moves down more. 4th and the 5th are the same. 6th, I've moved down 1. It's been flattened, and the 7th has been flattened as well. Do the same thing, starting from all fingers. This kind of idea across all strings. But you've got to be thinking of those intervals in terms of that A root now. See, does this make sense? I can see a few faces that are like, yes.
I can see the guitar.
Oh, you can't see the guitar? Sorry, man.
So you meant like to start with the first finger,
Yeah,
and then
with the 2nd, then the 3rd, and then the B. So basically, whenever I'm playing like over something, say I'm playing over a C major chord, you know, I am thinking of the intervals within that. I'm trying to think of a better example though. So some people will say when they're playing over A minor, like they're saying that they're playing C major over it, which is technically correct. But for me, I'm thinking of A natural minor, and I'm thinking of these intervals, how they function against that root.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
This is what I say. It's not the same thing.
Yes,
the
it's
notes
not
are the same, but it's not the same thing.
Yes, the worst thing ever for me, Matthias, is when, and I was taught this way in school, was like, you know, they say D Dorian, and they say please C major, which is a completely different sound and function, you know. It's the same notes, But I had a fucking huge argument with my teacher in school. I remember he was like a classical pianist, and he came in. I was speaking to another guitar player, and I'm showing him what's going on, and he's like, "What rubbish are you chatting?" And I was like, "Excuse me," and he said, "Look, it got out this fucking classical book," and he was like, "D to D, that's all. That's the Dorian mode, all the white notes." And he's saying, I was saying, "Yeah, but sir, you take that and then you can convert it into another key." No, the book says so. All the white notes. And I was like, I don't have white notes on my guitar. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, he was the head of music in my high school, you know, and that was the kind of argument. So that's another conversation.
I think you don't understand the nature of what you're playing.
Yeah.
If you think in these, parallel, whatever, it's not the same thing. I was playing with Play Supla, with Dweezil, and he's fabulous, a wonderful man. But I was oh, good lord, this is B flat, Lydian, or super whatever. And this is, oh no, I think in C major, whatever. So you do, but it's so weird. Because then it becomes like shapes, it's all the same note. No, the Dorian has adjusted the major sixth and blah blah blah. It's not the same thing!
Yes.
It's not the same, damn it! Yes!
Yeah, I mean, it's the characteristic thing, isn't it, of what makes every mode sound cool. I mean, let's take this example. We just did C major, the Ionian scale. Let's take Lydian as another example. And this is how this method works in my head, is like, so all I need to do, rather than learn and relate it to another key, which is what people will tell you to do, they say go to G major and then you've got the Lydian. It's a load of thinking, and the notes which you'll end up playing and targeting and focusing on are not going to be the notes that you want to hear over the chord. The way which I think of it is just like, okay, it's that major scale which we've just learned with a raised fourth. Just sharpen that fourth. So all of those patterns which we've just done, you take that fourth note, we've raised it. All I am thinking of is, okay, there's one note difference there. I'm literally just changing one note to the formula, and that's it. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Matthias. Like, it is one of those things. All of the modes, they can be overly complicated, I think, in terms of what you're thinking. For me, I like to think of certain chord types and relate them to sounds, and maybe that's what we can do now. So like, you can bunch chord types into what I think of as main chord types. And an easy way to do this to start is to think of shell voicings. Does anyone know what a shell voicing is? Right, I'm seeing a few no's. So,
I've got a question to that thing.
yeah.
You were thinking more in scales, if I'm right. So
Ah.
how would you do it if it's not diatonic? How could you apply this system if you're playing over chord changes?
So I will relate over the chord changes. I think of what the scale or whatever arpeggio I'm playing over that chord change in relation to the root of the chord that I'm playing. If this makes sense. So if I'm moving, say, A minor to C major, it's the same thing, but say the note C is the root over the C, but it's the minor third over the A, if this makes sense.
Not yet.
Okay. Hopefully we'll get there. I'll try an easy one in a second.
What is it called again? What is it called?
What's this, sorry?
What is it called?
Shell voice.
Oh, we're going to talk about shell voicings now in a second. Yeah, sorry, that was just a question about the intervals. So shell voicings, basically, do we know how to construct seventh chords here? Yeah. So 1, 3, 5, 7. There's one note in there that is, I call it the potato interval. It adds nothing. It's kind of, I'm already seeing the fives going up here. So it's the fifth, perfect fifth. So you know when you see these big block shapes, this kind of thing, the fifth has stayed the same. You see that? Major 7, dominant 7. The fifth doesn't really add anything unless it's altered in some way. So that means like raised or flattened. You know, if you add this, that's adding interest, but this, no. That's where you get power chords from. Because power chords essentially don't tell you whether they don't tell you the chord quality, essentially. They don't tell you it's major or minor. So you can get away with murder. We do that all the time in our tracks, you know. Fuck, what chord is that supposed to fucking play a power chord? But yeah, so tells me that there are two notes in there that are important to making the sound of the chord, and that is the third and the seventh. So if we take a major 7, for example, I'm going to get rid of that fifth. Let's all do this. If we take the root note of C on the A string, so that third fret down there, all I will do is I'll look for that major third, which is conveniently here, and then the seventh. It's a much more pleasant sound to my ears as well. This is kind of cool for all of that Instagram guitar stuff. You know, all that kind of thing, the neo soul thing. But sorry, that was a terrible joke. I mean, that's where that shape came in, and it does definitely have its place. But the shell, even though there's less notes, it sounds more open to my ears. I don't know if you guys feel that as well. If I want a dominant 7th chord, all I need to do is flatten the 7th. So that's the other main chord type I like to think of in my head. Got 1 major 3, flat 7. And then for minor 7, all we do is we flatten the third as well. So we've got 1, flat 3, flat 7. That sounds cool. That could be cool. Instagram then. That kind of stuff. But if we do the same thing on the low E string, you can get those same shapes. You know this. But that sounds really muddy. Can you guys hear that? There's something about the guitar between the E string and the A string when you've got an interval that's like less than a perfect fourth, I think it is.
We spoke about this today. That why we had a theme today. So when you play it on a single string, you can just. I don't like the sound of the low E string on a B. I want to move to the second fret of the A string. I don't like the sound. I can't hear the note. So boom.
It's bizarre, isn't it? The characteristics of it. I mean, this. That sounds okay. But this. It's like you really can't make it up. But on the piano, it sounds fine. I don't understand why that is. But yeah, what I would usually do is take that third up an octave. So now my shell voicing is like 1, I skip the A string, I've got the 7th, and I've got the third here. A little bit out of tune, sorry, that's why I'm using the whammy. It's not just because I'm in Instagram mode. Sorry, that joke. It's never going to get old. Good, thank God. Some places will be like, get out now, fuck. That minor 9 is sacred.
You're in the Spanish books, you can say anything. What happens here stays here. It's okay.
The next one then will be we flatten that 7. So that third is still staying up there. And then for the minor 7, we've got this now. This acts as kind of a perfect platform to add extensions. And when we were saying about modes and scales and all this kind of thing, this is how I like to start relating them. There is another main 7th chord type, minor 7 flat 5. You could argue there's diminished 7 and all that. Question. Yes?
So, when you say shell voicing is like you remove the fifth?
Yes. Yeah. So we just have those 2 most important notes, the 3rd and the 7th. That's the thing with this, is like when we start adding extensions, in fact you'll see, we can add craziness. So long as we know what the 3rd and 7th are, then we can give the chord a type regardless of how many crazy extensions there are on top. So if we start with that major 7 chord, oh sorry, wrong one. We start with this here. The first note we can add as an extension is going to be the 9th. So if we think, well, that's the note D, all of a sudden that is a much softer sound, you know, like this. It sounds really, really pretty to my ears, that. The next one, if we were to think of what our extensions are, we usually have 9, 11 and 13. They're just the notes that are missing from 135, 7. But if you try to play, in fact maybe do it, this will be hell to hear, but add in an F to this major 7 shell voicing. It's like, what the hell is going on there? Can all of you hear that clash? I mean, the clash is coming from, there's an interval relationship inside this between that 7th and 11th, which is a tritone. But we don't care about this. All we need to do is think we raise that to a sharp 11. And that's sits all of a sudden. So that tells me that when I'm playing over a major 7 chord, actually the major scale is not the scale that I would go to as first choice. I would rather go to this Lydian sound over the top of that. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't play major, but that 4th would be a note that you don't want to hang around on. I used to do this all the time. Tom Quayle used to go fucking nuts at me, I remember. Because I'd be there sitting over it, and I'd be going, literally going, you know, and you're like, oh, that is the worst note that you can play. But, it sounds really, really. Just the first one, which we need, really. So in my head, when I'm organising scales to play, like I say, major 7 chord, the first thing I'm thinking to play over that is Lydian. And I'm thinking of that, it's a major scale with a sharp 4. So, the last extension we can add to this is going to be this 30th. That note A, and that sits totally over that as well. Do the same thing with those low E string shell loosens. By the way, I'll send the PDF of all of this stuff, Matthias. I think I forgot to do that already. Yes, there's a few. Yes. So, you could do the same on that low E string. They are kind of like the main chord qualities when it comes to major 7. If we're not getting freaky, if we're not talking like sharp 5s and things like this, melodic minor harmony, forget that for now. We're just sticking totally to major scale harmony. You could do next the dominant 7 stuff. So I'm just going to say right off the bat, dominant 7 in my head. If we're not getting freaky with altered stuff, it's just the Mixolydian sound. Which, if you don't know that as a formula, it's the major scale with a flat 7. All you need to do. All this stuff I was on about before, you know, about going through. This comes in handy because all you're doing is literally changing one note in the formula, if this makes sense. So the first note we can add here is the 9th. Yeah. We can add the 11th over this. It's a bit weird, like this. This is more like a crunchy kind of sound. I'd much rather voice it like this, you know, which is something we'll get onto later. That's like a triad over a different. That sounds like the end of the blues to me, you know. So that's the 11th, and then you've got the 13th. Really, really pretty. Pretty? I don't know. That's like greasy, doesn't it? Maybe that's a better word to describe it.
Yeah, pretty. It's kind of good.
Yeah.
Greasy is so.
Yeah. I'm into grease, so. Yeah. So that's it for dominant 7th chords. And again, like I say, with the shell voicings, try and do that from the low E string and the A string. And the last one then is going to be the minor 7 ones for now. So you take again that shell voicing here. First one we can add is the 9th, and in a natural minor scale, that is the note D still. Got that sound. We can add the 11th on this one. It's it's the Guthrie tune, or is it? That's that minor 11 chord, 5s if you know it. But this last one is going to be the 13 or the 6th of some kind. If I think natural minor, this flat 6, listen to that over this, and it's just hell. If I go, it kind of can if you resolve it. If I take that up, I raise this. All of a sudden we're into cooler sounding territory, really, you know. So that tells me that the scale, or the first scale of choice that I'd use for minor 7 is actually going to be the Dorian sound, not natural minor or Aeolian. So again, if you're working through all of these interval kind of ideas, you know, you had your A minor thing before. All I do is I think, okay, it's just a natural minor scale, but I've raised the sixth. So all of those patterns, I'm only having to change one note in terms of that visual relationship. Now, once I've done this though, rather than doing these as huge scales and trying to improvise over a sound with this, it doesn't really get you anywhere. I've always found with guitar players, the very first thing we learn when we learn improvisation is usually the pentatonic scale, right? You know, this, they teach you, or the blues scale. These are perfect, that's all you need in reality. But then they learn 3-note per string and that becomes... There's no phrasing at all over the top of something. It just sounds like scale patterns or sequences. I'm going to tell you that for me personally as a guitar player, I'd much rather hear someone play nice phrasing with good vibrato, good time feel, you know, like a melodic sense with just a pentatonic scale than hear any kind of shred stuff. It's just like, I nearly lost my teeth. Maybe I can demo it. I've just got a backing track here that's just an E root note. And I'm just going to play E minor pentatonic for you over the top of this. When I think of the minor pentatonic, again, I'm thinking of it in terms of intervals. I'm thinking root, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor seventh, root, same thing. If I just play over this groove, you should be able to get musical phrasing just from this scale. I'm going to play it across all the neck for now. Later on we'll limit. But yeah, let's check this out. This is just over an E minor 7 chord, or just an open E chord actually.
Get my tempo right. That was not the backing track. Yes, that was not one chord.
Like I say, it's just a static E note. I'm just going to play the song over this. And this is where we can start to visualize more of these scales. So I like to think mainly around pentatonics as my framework for this. Now I will point out that if you have done 3-note per string and you have done cage system, there is no way you can unlearn that. It's going to be there forever. What we can do though is try to introduce these intervals into these systems. So this is how I did it. I was a 5-position pentatonic guy for years, still am, essentially, you know. But all I'm doing is trying to focus on what these intervals are within that pentatonic. So this, I mean, you can phrase nicely just with that scale. Like I say, it doesn't have to be, you know, give me the 7-note scales, give me diminished scales with all the... It doesn't have to be this complicated. I'll try one more time, but let's see how much juice we can get just with that one scale. Trying to really stick into that limitation there. It's just those notes, there's nothing fancy going on yet. It doesn't have to just be... There's nothing wrong with that either, you know, I'd rather hear that than... Just a personal preference. But what I would say is keep the guitaristic nature of that pentatonic sound. It's the one thing which we can do that, say, keyboard players can't do, is the bending. the manipulation of these notes, the vibrato, all that kind of stuff. Like a keyboard player can try to emulate this with the mod wheel, but it never sounds as cool. You know, these kind of... That is inherently guitaristic when I hear that type of phrasing. You know, it's funny, I should mention, there's a band who are very popular right now. I can't say who they are, but I had a student come to me. He was only young, he must have only been like 21. And he said, we wanted to go through some improvisation-based stuff, and I mentioned about how pentatonics are kind of the fundamentals. He was a complete shredder. He was playing a load of this band's songs perfectly, flawless execution, flawless technique. And then I said to him, okay, let's just start off basic. Let's just play a pentatonic scale. And he was like, oh. I was like, man, just... I was like, how do you not know this? And he said, said band said that that's only for boomers. Which is like, what? Said band use that all the time in their songs. That's the main part of it. But it fascinates me with that is like a new thing. Don't think the pentatonics are only for boomers and it's only blues band sound. Everything I've just played there was pentatonics, you know. And this will be the fundamental as we start adding these notes. So the way I like to think of this, some people call it hexatonic scales. And I think that is just a really fancy word for bullshit, basically. I'm thinking of this as pentatonic +1 in my head. So what I'm going to do is, remember I said Dorian mode would be the first kind of mode that I'd use over a minor 7 chord. I'll think, what notes am I missing when I play a pentatonic scale, or what notes can I take from a Dorian scale? So we've had 1, 3, 4, 5, 7. Which ones are missing? 6th is one of them, yeah. So we could take that as our first point. And I would think, I'm just going to limit myself to one position of this pentatonic. So the 12th fret, nice and easy. And I'm going to look for that 6th in there. So I would think, either here, or it's there. So I've got now, there's another one here. This is now my hexatonic scale over the top of this. But the way in which I'd be practicing it to get the sound in it, to keep this kind of pentatonic phrasing that I've already got, is I would limit myself, like I say, just to that one position, and maybe I would focus on starting all of my phrases with the 6th, or finishing all of my phrases with the 6th. What I'm trying to do is teach my ear what that sounds like over that chord, but also what the visual representation is within that shape. So if I try now, I'm just going to limit myself, like I say, this is really difficult to do, to that one position, and just focus in on the 6th. Let's try that over this sound. Of the limitation, you want to really focus in just on those 6 notes. It's just adding a little bit of flavour. Can you hear that so far? It's not crazy, but this is the Dorian sound. That is the characteristic of it. It's that major 6th. Then what I would do is get rid of that note. Again, go back to those 5, the pentatonic, and I would think, what is the other one which is missing? So we already had the 6th. What's the other note? 2nd. Yes, or the 9th. So I'd look for that within that scale shape as well. So we've got... Again, keeping it limited is the key. Like, the temptation is to run off all across the fretboard and try and find that note. I would say if you want to get the most out of your phrasing, limitation exercises are the best thing you can do. You know, you can do rhythmic limitation, you can do string limitations, we'll do a bit of that in a bit. But yeah, essentially you want to try and get as much musical language in that one area as possible. So let's try, this is with pentatonic plus the name. Sound a bit more sophisticated. Now, when you add in both notes, hopefully if you've done this the right way, as in with these limitations, you're not just thinking of this. Which is the temptation. Most people will do exactly this. In there at all. What I'd like you to do is think, okay, I like the sound of that 16th note phrase which involves in this. See how this is all just in that one area. You can milk it to death. And then, you know, like, it's one of those things, you could do this with all 5 positions of that pentatonic as well. Position 4, position 2, etc, etc. But it's within that limitation that I find the most musical ideas. It's not just these scale shapes. But then if I think, okay, this is Dorian mode everywhere, right across the fretboard, then we can start getting interested. Let's hear this. Just sounds like the 3-note string thing. I'm still using all of that pentatonic boomer stuff in my playing there. It feels so weird to say that. But it's not sounding just like the scale pattern. Hopefully that makes sense. Now you could do the same thing for natural minor as well. You know, maybe I can change the backing track for a second. But over this next one, it's just like an A minor sound. I'm going to think natural minor over the top. There is a chord movement there. To the 7 major 7. In my head, I'll try and target certain notes over that. But let's give this a go. It's a really slow one. It's more like a ballad. I'll just play for a little bit. But this will be the natural minor sound, not Dorian now.
So it's basically that flat 6. Let me just see. Look at the tempo. There you go. That flat 6, like I say, so I try and play the major 6 now. That's all the stuff wrong.
thinking of Aeolian, not this Dorian sound. Yeah.
Was this track from your YouTube? There's like the two most beautiful chords.
Ah, yes, yeah, man. Do you know, I'm convinced I probably robbed these chords from Eric Gales. Does anyone know Eric Gales out there? What player that guy is, holy shit. But yeah, the chords are something about the way that they're voiced, you know, getting back to that string thing we were on about earlier. Like the way in which they react together. I told you, don't play an interval less than a fourth, but that is a minor third. There.
Don't feel the rhythm.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's going.
Too young for
It's just that, I mean, when Eric plays it, I've stolen some of his lines. Something about that sound, which is super pretty. I know it's only like the 6 to the 4 or whatever, but yeah, man. Where was I? Someone remind me. Yes. Any questions so far? Yes.
So when you're moving across the fretboard like you're doing, are you thinking about like the 5 positions, the pentatonic plus the added 2 notes?
Yeah.
Or just about where the different roots are and...
So yeah, I will think of like a mixture of those 5 position pentatonics, and I'm thinking of arpeggios from within there. That's something that I want to get onto. Triads, things like this against it. But yeah, I'm trying to always relate those notes back to the root note, you know, of that A there mainly. You could do the same thing over the F as well. But yeah, say if I play a phrase like, I'm thinking 5, 4, 3, if that makes sense.
So every note you play, do you know what interval it is, or sometimes it's just like...
Most of the time. Yeah. I mean, there is a thing, and I'll say this a few times probably today when we talk about technique, but there is like when the random bullshit go happens. This is when, if I play over this, shred stuff. There, I'm only really interested in the last note. That's why I call it random bullshit go, because it's finger patterns that work. At those kind of speeds, you can't be thinking, it's like you couldn't think of every individual note name when you're playing something as fast as that. It's just impossible. The brain's not a computer. But I will think of what note I want to finish on, or what note I want to start on. So there I was thinking I'm starting on the flat 7. Finishing on the 5, if that makes sense. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, so something...
We'll go 1 and then 2. Yeah, you go first.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
So something that is always been a little confusing to me when I've been like learning like chord scales and based on like the chord function, what scale goes along to it, is that every time the chord changes, are you changing what scale you're thinking of? Because you just had like a 2-chord like loop going there. Are you switching like what scale you're thinking of when you go from the A chord to the F chord?
That's a great question, and I would say if I have time on a chord, yes. But if I don't, so I like to think of it really as like islands when I'm thinking of switching scales in my head. So if I am thinking, say, something non-diatonic, A minor 7 to C minor 7, say, or something like that. If I've got time on them, say like a bar or a measure for each one, or 2 bars. Then I will think of those as, you know, like 2 completely separate things. When it's quick though, and I am by no means a jazz guy, I'm shit at jazz in fact. If it's very quick, I am just thinking of chord tones. That's what I'm looking for. So the whole chord scale thing, I think it tends to fall apart when things are quick. You know, you think of the typical nightmare tunes like Giant Steps and things like that. There is absolutely no way you'd be able to go, okay, B Lydian, then D Mixolydian, and then no, that's when things go out the window and you just have to think of chord tones. So think of it, if there's an island, there's a long time there on a chord, then yes, think of it as the individual ones. When it's quick chord changes, just think of chord tones.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Next guy.
How do you apply this approach to like melodic minor and harmonic minor?
Great question. So if I'm going to be totally honest, I don't care about harmonic minor in my stuff. I hardly ever use it, but melodic minor, yes, I will show you over that same track. So
what I could do here, take that same E minor 7.
Construction of the melodic minor scale is basically like the Dorian scale with a major 7. So 1, 2, flat, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I basically just raise that 7th, then I've got from that Dorian. So I can get all I'm doing is like I'm converting all that language which I had with the minor 7 stuff. I'm bending the 7th or manipulating that 7th up a half step. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like you could definitely force that
over this. Check this out.
You get the idea. It's just, I was thinking still of this minor pentatonic if you want to. And then I'm just thinking, okay, that 7th needs to go up. You call it melodic minor pentatonic if you want to get all technical about it. Same principle as we did with the Dorian sound. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You could do the same for harmonic minor, it's just I don't really use that, like I think, okay, I just added that flat 6 and the raised 7th, you know. It's still within those pentatonic bass lines. It's a big bend to go from there, but it still works. Any other questions, or can we move on? Yes, at the back.
So again, with this part where you are playing pentatonic, and then there is one note that is that differentiates the melodic minor that you're using only with the pentatonic note.
Yeah, essentially, I was thinking of that same box shape that we learned, position 1, like of a minor pentatonic, but just raising the 7th from it. So my new like pentatonic scale would be 1, flat 3.
So always that hexatonic. It's always like the 6, 7.
No. That's just the limitation.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense. So the hexatonic, you could do that, what we did, like with the Dorian sound, where you can just have those 6 notes. But essentially, the way I'd start it in terms of my visualization is going from 5, then to 6, then to 7. If this makes sense. Yeah. Epic. Any other questions, or can we move on? Yeah? Okay, so the other chord type then we spoke about was, there was major 7 in there. So what I would do for this is I can think, if I know a major pentatonic, I can do exactly the same stuff. So what intervals are in that? You've got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1. So we want to make a hexatonic for this, we need to think, okay, what notes are missing? So in a major pentatonic, like I say, 1, 2, 3, then we've got 5, so there's the 4th missing there essentially. Remember, we said Lydian before the major scale. So the first note I'd add in would be that sharp 11 or the sharp 4. So I create this scale. Try those same ideas of limitation where I'm just trying to target over that sound, that sharp 11, and get a feel for what that sounds like, but also what it looks like there as well. Maybe I can demonstrate it quickly. So this is a Lydian sound now. The note that's missing will be that major 7. So. And we've got the folding inside. Rather than thinking again of that whole. Oh, sorry, I couldn't mention it. But thinking of that whole kind of 3-note per string scale shape, we're relating it back to pentatonics. The last one I would talk about though is dominant 7, and this is where people can get a bit confused. I like to think of this in 2 ways. So, the first is what I would call a dominant pentatonic. It could be totally wrong in the theory books and stuff. But essentially, that in terms of intervals for me is 1, major 3, 4, 5, flat 7. So it's like a minor pentatonic, it's just we've raised the third. Kind of sounds like Eric Johnson or the Beatles or things like this, you know that. This kind of flavour to it. That just acts as a nice platform, I think, to get that real dominant 7 sound. From there, you can do the same thing with these hexatonics or pentatonics plus 1. You can add in the 9th.
Stop. Shh.
That would be better. The earlier the better because it's fucking minor.
So, 11.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's because it takes 5 minutes to the airport. And because I have to take longer. Simon, he's your designated driver.
Thank you, Simon.
Yes, very good. And get some rest. And you get some rest as well, because tomorrow is going to be hell on earth. Well, it's not good, but so do get some rest. Stop at 10 at latest, okay? Okay, so I will cut the power mentally at 10, boom, blackout, and Simon take you to bed and tuck you in. And I'll see you tomorrow, and I love you. You're wonderful, you're amazing.
Thank you again for having me.
Let's just have an applause. But I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
11, somebody will be there. It smells like me. So yes, and also, Julien, close the tent. Or
Yes.
if you're going to bed.
Everybody close the tent.
Everybody close the tent. Turn up the fire! Yes, alright, very good. See you tomorrow. Bye bye. And also, turn off the amps and shit. Okay? Good. Thank you. Bye bye.
Please remind me to do that. Where were we? Yes, mixing the and stuff. So, same thing, you add in the 9th and you add in the 11th to this sound. But what's cool about this dominant pentatonic is there are a lot of the vocab that you would have had with minor. You can get a Mixolydian sound by just thinking, can I bend all of those minor thirds so I can get that? And it's not quite a minor third that I'm hitting, a major third that I'm hitting there. This is that whole blues thing. You might have seen guys like Clapton talk about this. It's like the actual note that Aria likes to hear over this dominant 7 sound. It's not. It's not that. It's that. That characteristic really. So all of the lines that you know, all of those boomer licks in the minor pentatonic will work perfectly well with this dominant pentatonic sound. Just bend those thirds up. I mean, we can try this, we can mix it. We get this. About a backup track like this is there's no thirds and 7s there, so you can mix all of them, and that's a good way to get used to the sound. You know, you could think Dorian, actually open. You can play melodic minor. You can play crazy shit like, I don't know, what's the scale of it? You could play Lydian dominance. This is the beauty of playing over these kind of one chord grooves, really, is that it's all down to you what you play. You know, you're not kind of restricted by the chord type. It's a great way to practice what these scale sounds sound like as well, and how you can phrase with them. Rather than looking at them in kind of the function of a chord progression, you can really get to grips with, okay, this is what this interval sounds like over, you know, the sound of this one note. Rather than thinking, okay, I have to work out what scale do I play over this chord at this point. I like to think of these as just these little islands at first when I'm first getting used to a scale type. You pick something, I don't know, what else could we play over that? E diminished will work over that. Interval construction for ladder is like flat, basically everything. We get this sound. Great way of teaching your ears what all of these sounds like what all of these scales sound like over that sound. Does this all make sense so far? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. See them more of not. Sorry, is this a lot after today with Matthias? I'm sure. I was just thinking now, I was like, fuck, they've been reading all day and there's me coming at them with hexatonics. Cool. So yeah, I mean, this is just a way I'd like to categorize those main chord types and like the scale sounds and how I visualize them, all that kind of stuff. But another big part of my playing is like triads and arpeggios. That's a huge thing for me. And I'm not talking about just like the basic stuff of, you know, you should all know this and how to construct them in terms of like playing them as chords and as single lines, but this kind of thing. If you don't know how to do that, the way I'd start is I'd think of, okay, I need to learn the root inversion of major triads on each string set. There's 4 string sets on guitar, so if you think, when we've got 3 notes, we've got the E, A, D string set, A, D, G, D, G, B, G, B, E. And what I would do first is just look at, can I find these nice and easily, playing them as arpeggios. Stuff. Practicing them that way is going to be invaluable, especially for like your chordal playing. I think we tend to learn too much of these block shapes, you know, like the drop 2s, which are totally valuable and you can use them later on, but really, when as guitar players at least, triads are arguably more important. I remember when I was in these cover bands, it was always with keyboard players. Now the musicians I had in there, they were from like the gospel background, so they were playing in the church all the time. And a lot of what they'll do is these lush sounding huge chords, especially on keys. You know, like I'd sit there and I'd try and jam along with them and I'd be trying to copy the voicings and I'd be playing these big 6-string voicings and the keyboard player would be like, whoa, what the fuck are you doing? No. I was thinking, why? I'm just trying to copy what he's playing. In reality, we get in the way as guitar players massively. He took me for a cigarette one time in a break during a gig, and he was like, Jack, let's just get one thing clear. He's like, think of the band as like a birthday cake. He was like, you have the bottom layer, which is bass and drums. He's like, you have the middle layer, which is all the harmony, that's all the keys, things like that. He's like, you have the top part, the main piece, is the vocals. He was like, you're just the sprinkles on top. I was like, fucking hell, thanks mate, at least I'm sweet, you know, but it's like, thanks a lot. But I get what he means. Like, I think if there's a keyboard player there taking up the harmony, it's better for us to just play a triad in most cases, or even single line things, you know. There was one of the songs I absolutely love. It was like, God, This old soul song called Never Too Much by Luther Vandross. Does anyone know that song?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. It goes. Now the keyboard player will be playing all of those huge sounding chords. Guitar is literally going. Literally. That works way better, or just this. That is going to sound infinitely more cool. I mean, maybe I've got a backing track of this actually. We used to have an arrangement. Let me just check. What's it called? Never Too Much.
Which Luther Vandross song is that?
Never Too Much. Yeah, where's it go?
That's what all the shredders say. Never too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I do have it. Check this. So, nice and easy. That's all I should play. Oh, it's brief ending. But that is all I should really, but not the solo. That was probably way too much. I'd probably be kicked out of any fucking pub in Matthew Street if I did that. But yeah, can you hear how keys are taking up all the space? We just need to occupy that little bit. It's the same when me and Owain write together. I'll often write rhythm guitar parts and he just fucking deletes them. Like it gets to the final thing and I'm like, I definitely had a rhythm part there, and he's like, didn't need it, mate, you know. But he also explained to me, and it makes sense. Look at Dirty Lips, you know, the band. They're like literally one of my favourite bands. Everyone always says, why don't they have a guitar player? And I don't know if you heard the newest album with Corey Wong. You don't really hear that much guitar. Like it just, yeah. It's if he is playing, he is just doing things like that. The whole. Little simple motifs, you hardly ever hear a big voice in because it's the keys dominating everything, you know. But I would say learning those funk and soul tunes, that taught me way more about like guitar playing than say some of the shreddy stuff did. You know, sitting in with a band and just being able to sit back like that is going to do wonders for your playing. It's going to do wonders for your time feel. You know, the time feel translates into the phrasing. It's all of these things. Does that make sense? Yes. What time are we on, by the way, guys? Because I don't want to keep you... 9:30. Oh, so we've still got a bit of time. Okay, so the other thing with triads, it's a concept which I love to use, and this is what a lot of the jazz world actually call hexatonics. It's triad pairs in my eyes. What these are basically two triads from within the scale. They're the same type usually and next to each other usually. So we think, you know, in C major, let's just do this, you've got C major, D minor, E minor. If I was vamping on a C major kind of vibe, what I could actually play is... That was E minor and D minor. That's our triad pair. Why does it work? Because you've essentially got E minor compared to that C root. You've got the third, you've got the fifth, and you've got the seventh. The D is all the extensions. You've got the ninth, the 11th, the 13th. So these chords. Super cheesy. This kind of sound, though, it opens up other avenues, and as guitar players, it links back to this whole idea of letting the keyboard players take most of the space. If I apply this to, say, a different chord, let's take a Lydian chord, for example. I could take a C major triad and a D major triad. So I could get this movement, because that D major gives me basically, I have the 6th, I have the 9th, and I have the sharp 11. So all of these triads over that root are giving me these Lydian sounding chords. I'm essentially getting all of the extensions on top. This isn't just limited to our chordal playing, you know. We don't have to just think of this, we can use these in our lines, and that's how I'm approaching it when I'm improvising. So I could take to get this sound, you know, even if the chord is not there. It's this kind of feel over the top, you know. You could do the same for, say, we could do it over that same backing track. The Dorian, you have like, let's say we're in E minor in this case. There's an E minor triad. Sorry, I'm playing a G major, and there's an A major triad. There's also an E minor triad and an F sharp minor.